I first came to know of Vinland Saga through Asian Boss. The video was about an unpaid intern that worked for the studio that was in charge of Vinland Saga. The art and animation resembles that of Attack on Titan. I really enjoyed watching Attack on Titan, so I decided to give Vinland Saga a go. It is set in the 10th and 11th century. It's about the Vikings' conquest of England. The anime is half based on history and half on Old Norse mythology. A lot of wars and characters are based on real life. The first season of the anime is far more historically accurate than a lot of historical fiction. Yukimura clearly did his research. Some of the episodes seem to me to be some type of poetry written about actual issues, philosophies, culture, and tradition section of the Vikings era. I learned a lot about Vikings and their history through this show. From where I'm from, we didn't study anything about Vikings in the school, so my perception of them was based entirely upon stereotypes. I thought Vikings were these bloodthirsty monsters causing nothing but destruction and havoc. I thought they were some sort of cannibals. And to some extent, my perception of them was true, but there's so much more to their history than I thought. They were incredibly adventurous people that have had a heavy influence in European culture and overall history. They sailed all the way from Norway to Northern Africa and even set up a small colony in North America 500 years before the age of exploration. They were hired by the Kingdom of France as mercenaries and they ended up settling in Normandy. Even the British royal family is descended from Vikings. There is something profound about this anime if you are a fan of history. Of course, it has some exceptions, but I don't find much to be out of place in this series. The biggest lure of this series is the hope and desperation to see a fight scene. Like seriously, if you have seen like even a single fight scene, then you'll instantly ask for more. If you are tired of all the modified versions of kamehameha, mythical creatures flying and fighting with supernatural prowess, or big giant robots going all out, then Vinland Saga might be just for you. The rawness of hand-to-hand combat is just fucking perfection, man. Instead of having minutes and minutes of conversations and flashbacks, the fight scenes are straight to the point. It's two people trying to kill each other as fast as possible, and anyone can die at any moment. There's no healing or reviving a character with some kind of godly power. If you die, you die. Feeling like I'm almost there, but I'm not. The first few episodes are focused on story building, and then if you are patient enough till episode 4 or 5, you'll see a lot of fight scenes, or as I would say, ass kicking. Thors used to be a commander of Denmark's Jom's Vikings. He was so powerful that Denmark's king gave him the title of Troll of the Jom. According to Norse mythology, troll means monsters that are giant, isolated, powerful and aggressive. This title suits Thors, at least according to Denmark's king. Jom's Vikings are victorious in a ferocious battle in Norway, but the troll dies. Wait, what? Did he die? Oh, he didn't die. He fakes his own death and escapes to Iceland with his family. Iceland was a safe place, a place that wouldn't be touched by the ravages of war, or at least that's what he thought. The way Vinland Saga presents the characters, it makes us sympathize with what they did, are going through or went through. Almost all the characters in this show are in some sort of fucked up situation that they didn't want to be part of, or even if they wanted it, the feeling is nothing like what they expected. Every young man of Iceland that has never seen war idealizes the concept of warriors and wants to be just like them, just like how we idolize the real life soldiers. But thanks to the access of television and the internet, we at least understand that being a soldier ain't no child's play. But in a world that has none of these things, no TV, no internet, no newspaper, how would these young men even know the true horror of the war? To top that up, Viking culture glorified the act of being a fearless warrior above everything else. These men believe fighting and dying in the battleground is their true purpose in life. They believe by dying in the battleground, they would go to Valhalla. Thors, however, detests going to the war because Thors knows the true reality of warfare, the ugly side of it. Thors tried his best explaining the real horrors of the war, what's it really like being a warrior, to Thorfinn and the young lads of the village, but they were too blinded by their tradition and religion to see from Thor's perspective. who decides where Thor goes, who decides with whom he lives, who decides how he should behave around people. Does Thor have the ability to decide everything by himself? The more the king of Denmark gifted and complimented him, the more the chains got heavier. When Thor decided to no longer fight and live a peaceful life, right then behind his back, without his permission, his fate was decided. Thor may try to escape his past, but no matter what he does, the war will always follow him, because Thor Snorsen was a slave to war. Thor is then forced to leave the peace of Iceland in order to participate in the war. He resists the call at first, but then gives in when Floki, another Vikings commander, threatens to disrupt the peace of Iceland. Thor doesn't want the innocent villagers to pay the price for his past, so he agrees to follow the order. But Floki had other plans. He never intended to fight alongside Thor again. Floki hired some mercenaries to kill Thor. Even when odds were stacked up against him, Thor proved to be the strongest of them all, and he outclassed them without even using any weapons. He beat the pirates with his bare hands, but Thorfinn is then taken hostage. Thor makes a deal with Askeladd, the leader of the pirates. Thor asks him to let his child live and instead kill him. Askeladd agrees. He and his entourage then proceed to kill Thor. And this is where young Thorfinn's revenge journey starts. He blames himself for his father's death and promises himself to kill Askeladd in a duel. This sets the story into motion. The story of Thorfinn, from an innocent and grieving child to a ruthless killing machine wanting nothing but revenge. This show's characters are extremely complicated. They are nothing like the 1D characters we are used to seeing in an anime. Under the surface of the strong characters lies not just revenge or sacred plans, but some interesting and very relevant philosophies. From three of the main characters, Thors, Askeladd and Canute, we see individual yet deeply related themes, with a sturdy backing from Thorfinn's actions. These philosophies are developed deeply over many episodes of the anime, but can also be summed up in simple phrases, and all focus on single word course with counterintuitive definitions. They are Thor's idea of the true warrior, Askeladd's view of the human as a slave, and Canute's newfound meaning of love. Together, they combine to form an accurate picture of the modern human, despite being shown through the lens of Viking men. Thors, Askeladd, and Thorfinn all show the downfalls of humans who try to force their own path when contrasted to the remainder of the cast. Whether as a warrior or not, they all fall to a system which inhibits personal growth and enlightenment. Thors as a true warrior exhibits how normal life can often be more difficult than combat, and how one can be punished for seeking something greater. Askeladd breaks his own mold of worldly pleasures and turns against his former self, and he loathes to follow someone he believes can change the world. Then Canute takes the lead at the end, wrapping Thors and Askeladd's themes into one powerful message relevant to most of us even today, about real love for humans. It feels weird to say, but this Viking anime somehow has expertly developed and extremely relevant themes for 21st century society. A true warrior needs no sword. This has a surface level meaning directly related to the action, as Thors is refusing to harm Askeladd's men and laying down his life for his own men. But he never says he isn't a warrior anymore, just that a true one needs no sword. Obviously, the interpretation is not one-way road, and I believe the mangaka himself might be asking us, the readers and viewers, about our own interpretation on the matter. So here is one interpretation. For starters, at this point in the anime, the only one that has found the answer to what it means to be true warrior is supposed to be Thors. That doesn't mean though he himself has achieved being a true warrior, since he admits to Askeladd that even he is imperfect, but out of all the characters, he is the one closest to the ideal true warrior. Aside from Thors, Askeladd also shows a glimpse of understanding what it means to be a true warrior, but he doesn't even try to achieve it. Thorkel, on the other hand, shows curiosity about what it really means, what Thor sees with his eyes, what is there beyond the common Viking belief of Valhalla. The Vikings as a people showed violence because they believe it led to ascendance, but as in any religion, they didn't have proof. They just blindly followed the ways of war and violence. So in the end, I believe it's not about what Thors could see, it's about what the others couldn't see. Thors achieved clarity. Remember, just before the battle in the sea, Ylva was born, and Thors had from that moment on a very important connection waiting for him. He wasn't just a warrior or commander anymore. He was a father and a husband, and he decided to put his family front and center. As much as they meant to him, he also meant to them. So he couldn't let himself die. Life wasn't just about him anymore. At the same time, he was able to find common ground with his enemies as they shared something in common, a family, and he decided to forego violence. Keep in mind that he asked Askeladd if he had a family, and that's very important. He started showing empathy to his enemies, and what is a greater show of empathy than to not kill anymore? This is the clarity Thors found. He could finally see the world for what it truly was, understood that a true warrior is he who shows responsibility towards everyone else, his family, his friends, even his enemies. Since he wants to live in order to be with the people he loves, what right does he have to stripe someone else from that same life? When I look back and think about it, the mindset they had resembles to that of jihadis today. Just look at how many young people join terrorist organizations. Young people from first world countries with access to so much information still choose to join this dreadful organization because they are blinded by their religion, blinded by their traditions and customs. They think it's their purpose in life. They think they will enter heaven if they die in the battlefield. They are so obsessed with the afterlife in heaven that they don't even try to live on earth. But most of these same young people, after joining the group, after finding what's it really like fighting, what's it really like being a soldier, they want to return back. They regret their decisions, but unlike in the anime, they have no chance of returning back. They dug their own holes, and now they have already fallen to the bottom, and there's no climbing back. Nonetheless, it's fascinating to see that even after almost 1,000 years, human beings still haven't learned from their history. Even in the 21st century, people kill in the name of God. That's not what God wants. Look, God doesn't want any lands, any loots, any lives, or any soldier to defend him. If he exists, then he is omnipotent. This is nothing new. Humans have done this for their entirety. Morally corrupt politicians manipulate people in the name of God, and these people brainwashed by religion end up doing dreadful things in the name of God. Everyone is a slave to something. It's hard to hate a person like Askeladd, even as the enemy paints him as Thorfinn's villain. He's one of the smartest individuals in the series, and while he's not the best fighter, he's the best thinker, at least practically. When his uncle whips a slave for breaking a plate, Askeladd says his uncle isn't any different. He's a slave to riches, making all his actions monetarily. It's kinda ironic coming that from a man who would slaughter and loot an entire village for treasures. Everything he does for money, up until the last few episodes. In his heart, he hates everyone. Every friend and foes, he thinks they all are useless. He thinks they have no value. They all fight for money, God, and Valhalla, but nothing of their own choosing. None of these men, except Thors, crafted a path or a future for themselves. Every goal, every ideal, every value they lived by was something they learned to pick from a standard pool and follow from there. What are you hooked on? What are you a slave to? Coffee, adrenaline, work, money? Do you wake up every day at ease, or are you gripped by anxiety or another unseen force that drives your behavior? Are you in control of yourself? It's like what Tyler Durden said in Fight Club. It's only after we have lost everything that we are free to do anything.
Most of us are unhappy in life.
Because we cling to things that we really don't need or even desire. We live in relationships that are way past its due date, work jobs that do not give any satisfaction just because we don't like to get out of our comfort zone. Sometimes life will take these things away from you and throw you in an uncomfortable situation, or create such situations where you will desert those things so that you can build a mindset that will take you to the next level. And that's exactly what happened to Askeladd. He loses everything. He loses everything that once was precious to him. His money, his men, and almost his life a few times. He recognizes something deeper and bigger than him in Canute. To get there though, he had to leave behind everything that mattered to him in his life so far, just like Thor. He didn't follow Canute for money or anything. For the first time, he was free to make his own choices. He was no longer bound by any He was no longer bound by any earthly materials like lost money or war. And that's how he breaks the cycle and finally becomes a free man. Love and its search for meaning are two of the most prevalent and influential concepts in this series. It influenced the development of two of the most influential characters, Prince Canute and to some extent Thorfinn. One could go deeply into the weeds, breaking down what happened between Canute and the priest. After a dream where Ragnar offers his farewells, Canute is left facing the reality of a berserker bjorn, destroying what's left of Askeladd's men, and the priest with his head in a barrel. The priest goes on a rant about love. He says what Ragnar felt for Canute wasn't love, as he watched 62 innocents die for him. The priest believes that only in death can mankind espouse God's love, not through salvation, but through becoming one with the earth and ceasing to exist as a consciousness. To exist is to create evil in effect. According to the priest, the corpse is the embodiment of love because it cannot hate, it cannot harm, it cannot kill, making the corpse the only human capable of pure love, as it will feed animals and insects and be fertilizer for nearby plants. That is the unconditional love. Canute then understands that the corpse is then connected to everything, the land, the snow, the tree, the animals. It all has a place on a cycle, and none of their components have ill intentions or selfish interests. Therefore, everything is love. If the priest met Thors before he died, I'm sure they would agree to each other when talking about love. The priest is the first person to acknowledge Thor's true feelings for his sacrifice. His was the purest form of true love to mankind. The priest may seem pretty much around the bend, but the irony of this is that the views he expresses to Canute, while undeniably presented in nihilist terms, are actually rather Buddhist. That's especially true when he describes all human love as prejudice. This so-called love just makes humans prioritize the object of their prejudice over other equally deserving humans. This is very far away from a Platonic ideal, which in many ways is the underpinning of all Western views on love. But it is quite close to the idea that love for other people is one of the temptations that keep humans bound to the physical world and prevent them from reaching enlightenment. What matters for the narrative, of course, is how Canute reacts. Canute reaches a sort of enlightenment, one might call it a humanist one, which places him rather ahead of his time. But he basically rejects the ideal of striving for an impossible redemption and embraces the notion of fighting the unfairness of God's creation and trying to make mortal existence as bearable as possible. He vows to create his own paradise on earth where humans are not slaves at their core. In doing so, he also embraces his role as a ruler. From a cute-ass waifu, he suddenly turns into a badass prince. This placed his prejudice at odds with the ambition of his father, among others. It also seemingly places Canute at the heart of the narrative, at least for now. Another phase in a very big story, which sees the protagonist's journey relegated to a supporting role. Canute is the end point of both Thor's warrior and Askeladd's slave, with his own concept of love that he wants to make possible in a new world.
Il me donne ses balles, il me paraît tout bas, je vois